The highway at night is not the same as it is by day. Asphalt that seemed harmless under the sun becomes a black ribbon stretching into nowhere, its edges dissolving into shadows that hold too much silence. The yellow lines flicker beneath your headlights, hypnotic and endless, while the darkness beyond the glass seems to lean closer, pressing against the windows as if it wants to get in. On an empty road, hours from the next town, you begin to feel the world watching. It is a place where rules bend, where time slows, and where the strange things that feed on loneliness and fear find their way to you. Out there, surrounded by nothing but road, sky, and night, you are no longer safe. You are exposed. Before I take you into tonight's journey through 10 true road trip horror stories, I'll ask you only this. If these stories unsettle you, if the fear lingers long after the screen goes dark, then leave a like for me by liking this video, share it so others can hear these voices from the road, and subscribe so you won't be alone when we return with more tales. Because no matter where you're headed, horror has a way of finding those who travel in the dark. Story 1. The Man on Route 117. It was just past midnight when Daniel Foster took the back road through rural Nevada, a shortcut he had driven dozens of times. The desert stretched in every direction, pale sand glowing faintly in the light of the moon, the air so dry that the taste of dust clung to his teeth. His headlights carved 2 weak tunnels into the emptiness, and the silence was total, broken only by the hum of tires on cracked pavement. He should have been alone. He was sure he was alone. But as the road curved, he caught sight of something that froze his hands against the steering wheel. A man was walking along the shoulder. There shouldn't have been anyone out there. The nearest town was 30 miles behind him, and the next was even farther ahead. The figure moved with a slow, deliberate pace, shoulders slouched, head tilted as if he was studying the ground. Daniel slowed instinctively, his high beams illuminating the man's back. He wore no jacket, no pack, nothing but a thin shirt that clung to him as if damp. His hair was long, matted, swaying in the breeze, but what unsettled Daniel most was his skin, ashen, gray, almost reflective in the light. When Daniel's car crept closer, the man stopped. He didn't turn around at first, only tilted his head farther, a jerking angle like a broken hinge, before slowly twisting to face the car. His eyes shone, not with reflection but with their own faint glow, and his mouth hung open wider than it should have, as though something had pulled it into a silent scream. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to drive, but his body felt frozen, every muscle locked as those pale eyes fixed on him. Then the man stepped onto the center of the road, raising one arm. His hand was wrong, fingers too long, bent backwards, reaching toward the car like it already belonged to him. Daniel slammed the accelerator, swerving wide, his side mirror nearly brushing the figure as he sped past. He didn't look back, he couldn't. But as the miles fell away, his rearview mirror showed something impossible. The man was still there, not shrinking into the distance, not left behind. He was walking, step by step, keeping pace with the car though his feet never seemed to touch the road. Daniel didn't stop until he hit the gas station at the edge of the next town. The attendant stared at him, pale and wide-eyed, before asking if he had taken Route 117 that night. When Daniel nodded, the man only muttered, "He still walks that road. Doesn't matter how fast you drive." Daniel never took the shortcut again, and even years later, the memory of those eyes still waits for him whenever the highway is empty and the night too quiet. Story 2. The Vanishing Hitchhiker of Highway 50. Maya Carter was driving east on Highway 50, a stretch of road some call the loneliest highway in America. The radio had long since faded to static, and the desert seemed endless, painted silver under the moon. Around 2 in the morning, her headlights revealed a figure by the roadside, a young woman in a pale dress, arm raised, thumb pointing toward the horizon. Maya hesitated. Every instinct told her not to stop, but guilt gnawed at her when she imagined leaving someone stranded in the freezing desert night. She slowed, pulling to the shoulder. The woman climbed into the passenger seat without a word. Her hair was dark and wet, strands clinging to her cheek as though she had just stepped out of a river. The smell hit Maya next, damp earth, mildew, and something sharp, metallic. Maya forced a smile, asked where she was headed, but the hitchhiker only whispered a single word: home. Her voice was raw, broken, and seemed to scrape against the air itself. Maya drove on, the silence between them heavier than the night outside. Minutes passed before Maya dared another glance. The woman was gone. The seat beside her was empty, though dampness still stained the upholstery, cold enough to sting her fingertips. Her heart pounded, her breathing ragged, but she couldn't stop, not out here. She pressed harder on the gas, telling herself she had imagined it. But when she looked in the rearview mirror, her stomach dropped. The hitchhiker was there, sitting silently in the back seat, eyes fixed on Maya with a gaze as cold and sharp as glass. Maya screamed, swerving wildly, pulling over until gravel spat against the undercarriage. She turned, but the back seat was empty again. Only the damp smell lingered. She drove the rest of the night without stopping, headlights tunneling through the desert, praying for sunrise. Locals would later tell her she had picked up the spirit of a girl drowned in the Carson River decades ago, a girl who never makes it home. And those who stop along Highway 50 sometimes carry her with them, if only for a little while. Story 3. The lights in the woods off I-95. Ethan and Rachel Myers had been driving north on I-95 for hours, heading home from visiting family. It was well past midnight when they decided to pull into a rest stop nestled against thick woods. The lot was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead, painting the pavement in sickly yellow. They killed the engine, letting the silence wrap around them. That's when Rachel noticed them, small lights flickering between the trees. At first she thought they were fireflies, but it was winter, too cold for insects. The lights swirled in patterns, weaving closer, then vanishing as though they were beckoning. Ethan, curious, stepped out to take a look, despite Rachel's protests. His boots crunched against gravel as he moved toward the tree line, the lights darting deeper into the woods like playful children. Rachel stayed behind, heart hammering, watching her husband disappear into the shadows. The minutes dragged on. Then she heard him calling her name, his voice strained, desperate. She leapt from the car, running toward the sound. But as she reached the edge of the trees, her stomach twisted. Ethan stood a dozen feet in, motionless, his face pale, eyes wide, lips moving though no words came out. She tried to call to him, but her voice caught in her throat. Behind him, more of the lights flickered, not random but forming shapes, tall, thin, humanoid, glowing faintly, their faces featureless voids. One leaned close to Ethan, whispering something Rachel couldn't hear. She screamed, the sound finally tearing free, and in that moment Ethan stumbled forward, breaking from whatever trance held him. Together they bolted back to the car, locking the doors, refusing to look back. As they sped away, Rachel glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the lights again, this time not in the trees but floating above the asphalt, chasing them until they merged with the night. The couple never spoke of it again, but sometimes, when Ethan dreams, he wakes gasping, whispering words Rachel doesn't understand, words in a language that hums like static and tastes of metal. Story 4. The gas station that wasn't there. Olivia Hernandez had been driving across Oklahoma for nearly 10 hours, exhaustion clouding her eyes, when she spotted a flickering neon sign in the distance. A gas station sat alone by the highway, its canopy lights humming faintly, the glow promising relief. She pulled in, gravel crunching under her tires, and stepped out into air that smelled faintly of kerosene. The attendant inside stood behind grimy glass, motionless, his head bowed as if he were asleep. Olivia filled her tank, the pump rattling with an old, mechanical clunk that felt decades out of date. When she walked inside to pay, the bell above the door didn't ring. The man behind the counter slowly raised his head, and Olivia's stomach dropped. His eyes were entirely white, no pupils, no irises, like marbles clouded with milk. His mouth curled into a smile too wide, and in a voice dry as sandpaper he asked, "You've come far, haven't you?" Olivia stammered, shoving money toward him, but when she glanced down at the bills, they weren't hers. They were old, brittle, yellowed with age, ink faded and edges torn. She bolted, rushing to her car. But the gas station wasn't the same. The canopy lights were out, the pumps rusted, weeds growing between cracks in the concrete. The building's windows were boarded, the neon sign shattered. Heart racing, Olivia scrambled into her car and sped off, gravel spraying behind her. When she looked into the rearview mirror, the station was gone. The highway stretched empty and black, the only light her own headlights. Later, when she told the trucker at the next rest stop what she had seen, his face darkened. He told her of a station that had burned down decades ago after an explosion killed everyone inside. Travelers still see it sometimes, he said, when they're too tired or too close to sleep, and those who go inside never return the same. Olivia never drove at night again. Story 5. The Shadow That Followed on Route 66. Marcus Lee had always dreamed of driving the old Route 66, the iconic ribbon of roads stretching across forgotten towns. He left Chicago with nothing but a backpack, his camera, and an eagerness to see the country the old way. The first days were uneventful, but somewhere outside New Mexico, he noticed something strange. As the sun set behind him, he saw his own shadow stretch across the pavement, and another beside it. At first he thought it was just the play of light, a trick of the fading sun. But when he stopped at a roadside diner, the second shadow didn't vanish. It lingered on the ground, a tall, thin outline standing just behind his own, shifting when he moved, tilting its head though Marcus had not. He tried to ignore it, eating quickly, avoiding the curious stares of other patrons. When he returned to his car, the shadow followed, crawling along the ground even when the night swallowed all other light. That night, he woke in a motel room, cold air seeping under the door. The room was dark, but on the wall opposite his bed he saw it, his own silhouette, and another taller, leaner, distorted, leaning over him. He froze, heart pounding so loudly it drowned the sound of his own breath. The shadow bent closer, stretching its limbs until its head nearly touched his chest, then slipped back into the floor as if melting. Marcus didn't sleep again. By the end of his road trip, he had grown thin, pale, eyes sunken from lack of rest. He swore the shadow followed him all the way to California, vanishing only when he stepped into the ocean. Some nights, when streetlights cast him long across the ground, he still looks twice, terrified of what he might find standing just behind. Story 6. The Disappearing Car on Highway 101. Driving the coast at night can be hypnotic. The ocean black and endless to one side, the cliffs rising on the other, the road twisting like a serpent between them. For Claire and David Morton, the trip down Highway 101 was supposed to be romantic, a quiet escape. But near midnight, as fog rolled in thick and low, headlights appeared in their rearview mirror. A pair of bright beams, following close, too close, pressing them forward. David frowned, switching lanes, but the car behind mirrored every move. Its lights grew closer until they filled the mirror, blinding white. Then, just as David prepared to pull over, the lights swerved off the road, straight toward the cliffs. Claire gasped, certain she would hear the crash, the explosion of metal on stone. But there was nothing. No sound, no wreckage. The headlights were gone, swallowed by fog. Shaken, they drove on, trying to convince themselves they had imagined it. But at the next curve, the lights appeared again, this time ahead of them, leading the way. They followed at a cautious distance, but as the road bent toward a bridge, the car in front swerved again, this time vanishing into the ocean below. Claire screamed, David slammed the brakes, but when they rushed to the guardrail, the waves below rolled silent and dark. No splash, no car, nothing. Locals later told them that on foggy nights, travelers see a car that died there decades ago, a young couple that skidded off the cliff in the rain. Sometimes it follows. Sometimes it leads. But it always disappears, pulling others toward the edge, daring them to join. Story 7. The Girl in the Rest Stop Bathroom. Kara Simmons was driving cross-country alone, her playlist keeping her company as the hours stretched. Somewhere in Kansas, fatigue hit her hard, and she pulled into a rest stop glowing faintly under harsh white lights. The building was silent, the parking lot empty. Inside, the air was stale, the hum of fluorescent tubes echoing off tiled walls. She chose a stall, the creak of the door louder than it should have been. That's when she heard it. A soft giggle. High-pitched, girlish, playful. Kara froze, her blood running cold. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling. No answer. She peeked under the stall door, but every other cubicle was empty. She tried to laugh it off, washing her hands quickly, when the giggle came again, this time right behind her. Spinning, she saw her own reflection in the mirror, and a little girl standing just behind her shoulder. Pale skin, hollow eyes, hair hanging limp and wet. Kara screamed, stumbling back, but when she turned around, the bathroom was empty. The girl was gone. Only her reflection remained, faint and lingering in the mirror long after Kara herself had moved away. Terrified, Kara bolted to her car, fumbling the keys, peeling out of the lot. In her rearview mirror, for a split second, she saw the girl again, sitting calmly in the back seat, smiling, before fading into the dark. Travelers who use that rest stop still whisper of a girl who drowned in the creek nearby, who wanders into the bathroom at night, waiting for someone to notice her reflection. Story 8. The Truck with No Driver. Anthony Ross had been hauling freight through the mountains of Colorado for over a decade, and he thought he had seen everything the road could throw at him, until one icy night on a remote pass. The snow had eased into a light flurry, visibility poor but manageable, when headlights appeared in his mirror. A truck, larger than his own, barreled down the incline, its high beams blazing, horn blaring in a long, broken wail. Anthony gripped the wheel, pulling right to let it pass. The massive rig roared up behind him, the engine screaming with a sound not entirely mechanical, rattling his trailer as it surged alongside. That's when Anthony saw it. The cab was lit, every detail visible, but the driver's seat was empty. No hands on the wheel. No shadow behind the glass. The steering wheel turned on its own as the truck swerved dangerously close, scraping the side of Anthony's trailer with a metallic shriek. He fought the urge to slam his brakes, knowing one wrong move could send him off the mountain. The ghostly rig surged ahead, headlights vanishing into the snow. Minutes later, Anthony rounded a curve and froze. The truck was there, jackknifed across the road, trailer twisted, lights flickering. He braced for impact, heart racing, but as he slammed the brakes, the image dissolved. Nothing blocked the road. The pavement stretched clear and empty before him. Old-timers later told him the story of a driver who lost control decades earlier, plunging off that same pass in the dead of winter. On snowy nights, some say his truck still runs the route, driverless, haunting anyone unlucky enough to share the mountain with him. Story 9. The motel room at the edge of town. Samantha and her boyfriend Luke had been driving cross-country when fatigue forced them to stop at a small roadside motel just past midnight. The neon sign buzzed faintly, half the letters dark, and the man at the desk seemed relieved to see them, his eyes darting nervously toward the windows as he slid them the key to room 6. Inside, the room smelled of mildew and stale smoke, the bed spread a faded floral, the lamp casting more shadows than light. Too tired to argue, they collapsed into bed. Sometime past 3, Samantha woke to the sound of whispering. At first she thought it was Luke, but he slept soundly beside her, chest rising and falling in rhythm. The whispers grew louder, surrounding the room, voices overlapping in a language she couldn't understand. She sat up, pulse hammering, and saw shapes moving in the corners, tall, faceless, darker than shadow, pressing closer. She reached to shake Luke awake, but he remained limp, unresponsive, as though trapped in a dream. The voices grew sharper, insistent, and the air grew heavy, pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Desperate, she stumbled toward the door, clawing at the lock, but when it opened, the hallway outside wasn't the same as before. The wallpaper was peeling, the carpet rotted, the air thick with the stench of decay. Figures lined the corridor, motionless, heads tilting in unison as their whispers filled her skull. She screamed, slamming the door shut, only to turn and find the room empty. Luke was gone. The bed was neatly made, as though no one had touched it in years. At sunrise, the desk clerk found Samantha curled outside on the pavement, shaking uncontrollably. When police checked room 6, it was boarded shut, condemned after a fire 20 years earlier that had killed a young couple inside. Locals said no one should have had a key. No one should have been in there at all. Story 10. The Road That Loops Forever. David and Emily were returning from a weekend camping trip in the Appalachians when they decided to take a back road to save time. It was a narrow, twisting strip of asphalt through dense forest, the trees pressing close, their branches arching overhead like ribs. They drove in silence, the GPS long since lost, headlights sweeping over the same endless scenery. After 20 minutes, Emily frowned. She recognized the crooked oak on the right, its trunk split by lightning. But hadn't they already passed it? Another 20 minutes, and there it was again, the same oak, the same bend in the road, the same rusted road sign hanging crooked. Panic set in. They were looping, trapped in some impossible circuit. David turned the car around, but no matter the direction, the road returned them to the same place. The forest grew darker, thicker, and the air inside the car stifled, heavy with the scent of rot. Emily swore she saw faces between the trees, pale and watching, mouths open as though silently laughing. Hours passed. The fuel gauge sank lower. Both of them were trembling, tears welling, when finally a pair of headlights appeared ahead. Relief flooded them as they flagged the car down. But when it pulled alongside, their hope died. It was their own car. Their own faces stared back from the driver's seat and passenger window, pale and horrified, mirrors of themselves trapped in another loop. The other David mouthed words either of them could hear, then the vision blinked out, swallowed by the night. They were found days later, the car abandoned on an old service road, keys still in the ignition. Both David and Emily were gone, their belongings neatly arranged in the back seat. No one could explain how the car had gotten there, or why the road seemed to end at a wall of forest with no way in or out.